Hi, and welcome to the OrgDev podcast. We're running out of time to save the planet, so organizations need to act now. And one of the major challenges is how to make business sustainable. Now, traditionally, the focus has been on tech, hardware, and investment. But what if the answer is through its people? Dr. Tara Shine, our esteemed and engaging guest, believes that the people of the business, HR, OD, talent, L&D, have a critical role to play. And Tara believes that everyone needs to change if we're going to tackle the real climate issues. Tara has dedicated 20 years of her life to the pursuit of fairness between people and the planet. And Tara's passion and knowledge of climate change, the environment, and development issues has taken her across 7 continents of the world in many different capacities, from science and policy advisor to public speaker to explorer to TV presenter, social entrepreneur, and author as well. And she's even delivered the Attenborough Christmas lectures on BBC One. Tara is a co-founder, along with Madeline Murray, of an award-winning social enterprise, Change by Degrees, a sustainability skills platform that helps every person to have sustainability as a superpower. She spent 20 years as an international climate change negotiator and advisor to governments and world leaders on environmental policy. Now, I know Tara through her Antarctica expedition. I was tasked in playing a very small part in supporting her get ready for the Homeward Bound expedition with 90 female leaders in STEM, which is a fascinating story in itself. And she has the book How to Save Your Planet One Object at a Time, which is out now, and you'll find a link to the book in the show notes today as well. And it's all about finding a solution to the crisis, making sure that we have to change everything, even the objects we use on a daily basis. All of her experience is underpinned by an extensive academic background. She has a PhD in environmental science and geography from the University of Ulster, and she's also a regular sea swimmer. So it's endurance in itself as well. So Tara, thank you so much for joining us. We're absolutely honored to have you join us just on one of our last sessions before Christmas.
Let's kick us off. Just tell us a bit more about the work that you do.
So I've worked in sustainability, climate, the environment all my life, but the way that I do that now is as co-founder and CEO of Change by Degrees. And Change by Degrees is all about building the skills, the confidence, and the motivation in people to play their part in making their organization more sustainable, but also taking that out into their life, into their home, and into the community that they work. So I'm a real believer in empowering people to create a sustainable future. So, if you boil it back, the only reason we have a climate change or nature problem is because of people. So people are the problem, they're also the solution, and that's what we want to dial into.
And can you just define sustainability for us? Because everyone will have a slightly different version of what they think sustainability is.
First things, Danny, that we try and help people to understand when they come onto the Change by Degrees skills platform and they come there to learn and to share is that sustainability is so much more than being green. So it's not an environmental issue only for people who are interested in the environment or vote for a green party or buy eco-friendly things. Sustainability is about the way we live life now and what we're going to pass on to the generations that come after us. So it's about being a good ancestor. And who doesn't want to pass the world on to their kids in a better condition than they inherited from their parents? And so sustainability is about trying to get a balance between the environmental, social, and economic components of life or running a business. And kind of saying it isn't all about the bottom line and the money. It's also around our people and how we treat them and the conditions they have at work and how they're paid and the benefits we give them. And it's about the environment that the business operates in and relies on in order to even have a business. And that matters as much also as the bottom line, and trying to get a better balance and see the interconnectivity between those things.
And what's your ultimate vision? How would you like to see things change or things be?
Oh, well, I would just like people to get excited about sustainability. So if you look around us right now, there's a whole lot of things that are broken. We have unprecedented levels of conflict. We've just lived through a pandemic. Inequality is growing. There's homelessness. There's people dying of non-communicable diseases. Like, we're not really doing that well at the moment. We have a huge divide between the wealthiest and the poorest people in the world. So what I want people to get excited about is imagine what it could be. Imagine if we were creative and innovative and we cared about people and we cared about nature and we cared about our communities and we designed a better life on Earth where there was clean water and clean air and everybody had access to food that was really good for them and affordable. Everybody had a home to live in. You didn't need to have 2 cars to function. You didn't need as money as you need now. You could have work a 4-day week. imagine what it could be better. So I want us to get to that where we aren't talking about human beings being a threat to our planetary home anymore, but where human beings are kind of nice, caring residents of their planetary home and reaping the benefits of that.
I mean, I'm in on all that.
Did you have a question, Garen?
No, I didn't. I'm in.
But yeah, like it just could be so much better than it is now. Like, why are we? I feel like there's a paralysis, like we're scared to change things, but they're not so great right now. So imagine if we just weren't scared and we allowed ourselves to dream big and we created something better. Like, that's the invitation. Come with me. Let's create something better.
But that's a really interesting thing, is it? Because you often see it with change in organization. It just feels overwhelming.
Mm.
Like there's so, wherever you look, there's something, and who is little me to make a difference in it? How do you sort of break that challenge down for people?
That's why it's changed by degrees, Garen. Because it's all about, like, yeah, if you present people with the totality of the emergency and crisis we face, they just freeze, right? You either run away from it or you freeze and you go, well, it's too big for me, nothing I can do. So we have to break it down into pieces and also fill it with hope and opportunity. And so you're better doing something than nothing. Like, if you think back to the beginning of the COVID pandemic, for example, the worst bit was at the beginning when it was really big and scary and you didn't know what to do, right? And everybody was just stuck at home looking at the television waiting for someone to tell them what to do. And then when we were told there was rules and there was masks and there was social distancing and we could live life but by these certain rules, then you're like, okay, well, I know what to do, I can play a part, and now there's something, I feel better, I don't feel as anxious. And so in helping organizations make change, yes, I'm not going to lie to you, we need to completely transform the way we run businesses and do business completely from the way it is right now. So that sounds scary, but we can do that in steps over time. Not a lot of time because there's a kind of an urgency thing going on, but we can break it down into steps, and it's not all your job. So you have a role if you work in HR or organizational management, but you also have a job. You also play a part if you work in procurement, or if you work in corporate finance, or you work in, I don't know, the operations. So it's not something that any one person has to do on their own. It is a team sport, all of this, just as any change process. Having a plan, setting some KPIs, ticking those boxes off as you go, it's just the same with this project. It's just more ambitious.
So what can, given our audience is predominantly HR, OD, L&D, kind of the people, what role can they play? What do you see the specific role of those people in making the change in their organizations?
Yeah, so I think there's like two main areas. So one, you are the custodians of the S in ESG. So I said that sustainability has three pillars, and one of them is social. And in terms of like it's sustainability reporting, where you're having to tell the world what your company is doing about sustainability, we call that environmental, social, and governance reporting. And there is a big S as well, and that's you as well. So you're the social, you're the people part of that. So you need to have a seat at the table anytime someone is talking about sustainability because they cannot do it without you. So that S is where you're going to have all of your policies and procedures disclosed to the world. It's about your how you play your employees, how you look after them, the terms and conditions, how you onboard them. All of that falls under that S, and then it stretches out into your connection with your community. So it's your corporate sustainable, corporate social responsibility work that you do as well, and then it's all the people that you interact with in your supply chain. So you might be working with colleagues there on procurement, but it's still a human beings, human rights, terms and conditions that you would be looking at along that supply chain. So number one is you're the S, so you're really, really important. And the other thing is that because sustainability and making businesses sustainable is an enormous change program and a transformation process, we can't do it if we don't bring the people with us and help them change. So this is about behavior change. It's about mindset change. It's about doing your job differently a year from now than you're doing it today. So that is fundamentally the job of HR, of L&D, and of OrgDev people. So, and I think that's overlooked all the time. I think for the people who lead on sustainability, they think this is like a technical challenge. It's an energy efficiency problem. I need some baseline data on our carbon emissions problem. That's part of it. But in order to change any of those metrics and achieve any kind of KPIs around sustainability, you have to bring people with you and change their behaviors. So you are at the center of it all.
And this isn't just necessarily a nice to have, is it? This is something that actually delivers value on the bottom line, because I think sometimes that they're kind of decoupled, aren't they? One is profit is over here, and over here is like just nice like things that are good for the brand over here as well, but they're interlinked, aren't they?
Yeah. So I would say if it feels like in your business that sustainability is an add-on, you're in trouble. Well, if it's not there at all, you're in trouble. If it feels like an add-on or sort of an opt-in, a nice to have, you're also in trouble. So sustainability has to be at the heart of your corporate strategy. It has to be sit in your corporate purpose. And that's because you won't be around 5 to 10 years from now if it isn't, okay? Because you are either gonna be forced into this through regulation and compliance around primarily like reporting and disclosing your non-financial data in the same way as you do your financial data, your audited accounts, that type of thing. But also, people won't want to work for you. So the most sought after skills in the world right now are green skills, and the most sought after companies are companies with a strong purpose and with a strong commitment to sustainability. So if you want to attract and keep the best people, it's really good to have a very clear sustainable purpose and for that to be credible. And that when people step in to work for you, so they come in and they do their onboarding, that they're told about the access they have through to sustainability learning on an ongoing basis, that they'll be encouraged to develop their sustainability skills no matter what function they work in the organization, that there's employee resource groups or green teams where they can get involved in sustainability projects, that there's incentives and bonuses for people who develop their sustainability skills, and that their performance review will evaluate what their contribution is to delivering on the sustainability goals of the business. So it's really important from an employee attention thing. And another way that I see a lot of people really focusing their minds on sustainability now is they can't win work unless they can show their sustainability credentials. So if you're in the supply chain of any larger organization with significant sustainability commitments, in order to do business with you, they're going to need to know what your sustainability plan is, what actions you're taking, what your data is, and you're not going to win the work without that. So there are so many levers. Yeah, it's absolutely business critical now.
If somebody is working in an organization where they've got that minimal compliance attitude, so where do they start? How do they start making change? What can they do realistically to shift the dial?
Yeah, so I think there's lots of things that you can do. So one, it's hard being lonely in that position, feeling like the only one. So if you're the only one that's frustrated at the state of the bins and why can people not put the dirty coleslaw containers in the wrong bin, this type of thing. So one, get a group of people around you because then that's easier. So you could set up your own sustainability team of people who just want to try and push for that within. First thing you might do is create a business case that you might take to perhaps the senior sponsor that you think is most likely to listen. Or you can start by finding that senior sponsor who you think is most personally engaged and working with them to figure out how to bring the business case to the leadership team or to the board. You might also want to build your own skills, so increase your own knowledge, because then you're going to have more confidence in challenging when these things come up. So upskill yourself in sustainability. So I think there's quite a lot you can do, but don't be on your own. It's hardest to make change when you're on your own. So find a team to work with.
What do you see the role of senior leaders in this?
Because there's a skill. There's
Mm.
lots of senior managers that have the role of sponsor, but there's very few good sponsors out there because it's not clear what a sponsor should do. It's not a
Yeah.
symbolic thing, is it? They've got to really get behind it, haven't they?
Oh, I mean, 100%. And it can't be one sponsor either. Like your sponsor is just your gateway into the key decision makers if they're not already all over this. So if the board and the executive team are not leading on sustainability, yes, you have a problem. They need a different mindset. So if your leadership are running the organization today the same way they did 3 or 5 years ago, you're in trouble, right? Because they're not ready. They're not ready for AI. They're not ready for sustainability. Your organization probably isn't digital and lean, okay? So your leaders need to be really aware around what's happening in the world, and that includes what's happening in sustainability. It's a massive business agenda, and they need to be setting themselves ambitious goals and having a strong plan to make sure that the business is still viable 5 to 10 years from now. So if they don't have that, if your leadership doesn't have it, no amount of green teams of volunteers in the business can change anything. They might get people putting the right thing in the bin in the canteen. You might change away from paper to digital, but you're not going to transform the business. It's not going to be material to the business. So to make material changes to the business, the leaders are absolutely essential. So yeah, you don't need a tokenistic sponsor, but you need a strategic sponsor who might be able to get the rest of the board on. And I mean, really, they'd have to be living on the moon at the moment not to understand that this is business critical. It should be popping up on their LinkedIn. It should be in every conference they go to. It should be a discussion in their I don't know, in their rounds of golf with other business leaders on a weekend. Like, it should be in their conversation, or they're really not that tuned in.
For the majority, it is on there. It is seen as business critical.
Yeah, I think it's on most people's agenda, but I think there's a risk there. I think some are looking at it now as a kind of, oh, this is a new set of kind of regulations or compliance or legislation that we have to deal with. And like, we'll just do the bare minimum to be compliant. Okay, do that if you want, but you're missing a massive opportunity. Yeah, yes, you're evading the risk of getting in trouble for not being compliant, but you're missing all of the potential upside of being a sustainable organization. So all of the business growth that comes with that, all of the innovation and opportunity, they're missing. Yeah. I mean, I have leaders say to me, "Oh, is this sustainability stuff? Is that like that data protection stuff we had to do? Like,
Or
is it
GDPR.
yeah, is it like GDPR?" And I'm like, well, no, it's about whether or not we'll have a planet that's viable to run businesses on in, the next couple of decades. So yeah, I think it can be on your agenda and you're not taking it seriously. You can be aware of it and be doing nothing about it. You can be aware of it and be just doing lip service to it. So you can have a fancy net zero statement and nothing have changed. And I mean, that's the thing for people to look out for. If your job is the same as it was last year or 2 years ago, and your company has a big flashy net zero or sustainability commitment, there's something wrong. Your job should be changing.
And you've spent a lot of time in the boardroom, haven't you? Actually, sort of presenting to leadership teams, and you've obviously seen the dynamics and how you can work with the dynamics to make sure that point lands. And so, what has been some of the things that you do see, and what can senior leaders that maybe get it, but there's other leaders in there that don't get it, and it's even harder when it's the most senior person that doesn't get it. What tactics do you have there to deploy to try and get those people on board?
Yeah, so I think with leaders, you've got to be very honest with them around the facts. So, like, the facts around climate change and the risks it poses to business are very, very real. And there's so much evidence. Like, we could be here talking about facts all day in terms of the material risks that it poses to business. So you have to be clear about that. But if you just stay on risks and bad news, you lose the room. So then it's like, okay, so those are risks that, increasingly under new regulation, you will have to disclose those risks, how your business is at risk to the whole world. So that doesn't feel very good. So then you need to be able to say, well, what are we going to do to manage those risks? And that's where the action to be more sustainable comes in. And that's an opportunity. So that when companies and leaders look at it in that way, they find lots of opportunity. Another thing I see with leaders and in boards in particular is there tends to be a very small focus. So the focus is on, can we make the business, the immediate operations of this business more sustainable? Oh my God, can you hear the dog snoring? Hang on. Freddie, stop snoring. But yeah, another thing I see with leaders is that they think too small. So they're thinking about how do they make the operations of their business more sustainable, like, and what's in their immediate gift. But what they miss then is they miss out on their influence. So all of their suppliers, everyone that buys their product or service is in their value chain. They also are a business with a seat at the table on a chamber of commerce. Perhaps nationally, they can even get access to an elected member of parliament. Like, they have influence, they have access to power, they run large organizations. And so when you then ask what their role is in not just making their business sustainable, but in making society, their community, their city, their sector sustainable, now you're asking very different questions. And that's where the gold comes, because that's where you're looking at the influence of the organization. And if you've strategically minded board members, they should get excited about that. So it's a lot of what find myself doing is opening people up to this bigger agenda, this bigger opportunity.
I guess, have you got any examples of organizations that you've worked with that have been on the journey? So from tick box exercise treated like GDPR to actually this is front and center and it creates value for us on the bottom line, but it also makes our work more meaningful for our people as well.
The tick the box people, they don't hang around as our clients for long because they don't continue to invest in sustainability. They can think they can do one thing and tick the box and disappear, right? So the longer term clients, people who work with us in the long term, the benefits they reap are around finding the innovations and the opportunities. So if you're a business and you're trying to think about how to be more circular as a business, and I'm thinking about a particular business here, but I won't name them. So they're trying to think about how to be more circular, how to bring circular economy more into their business. And they're thinking small about the operations of their business. and the products they buy and the things they make and the services they provide. So that means that they're asking small questions about where they fit in a circular economy. Then if they start to say, well, how do their goods and services help society be more circular? Now they're asking a very different question. And when they ask that question, and when you're ready to ask that question and you see the opportunity, and then you're ready to invest in sustainability, not as a box to be ticked every second year, but as something which is a transformation organizational development project which is ongoing, where you're continuously learning, challenging, revising, improving, then the business opportunities are massive. Then you create whole new products and services that drive business value that you never knew were there until you asked the bigger question.
So what was your journey into doing this work? So it's obviously been, a passion and a career. How did you get started?
Oh, so like as a kid, I was very enthused about it. Was a time, so I grew up, well, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and it was a time of, for me, it was a time where like whales, remember that it was the time where the whales were endangered and we were about to obliterate them from the planet, and I really cared about animal rights. My dad was a geography teacher and the house was full of National Geographic, so I had all this like curiosity about the natural world. And so when I was coming up to like finishing secondary school with no idea really what I wanted to do, I found a course called environmental science, and I was like, that's it, that's the one. So I studied environmental science in the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland, and that was the gateway to what I've done literally for the rest of my life in so many ways. But I've done it from so many different directions. So I've worked in international development, so I've lived and worked in Africa for years. I've been an advisor to large organizations like the OECD and the World Bank. That took me to Mongolia to work. That was fantastic. I've worked in research and academia. I've worked advising governments, as a climate change negotiator. And then for 8 years, alongside Mary Robinson in the Mary Robinson Foundation for Climate Justice, working on trying to embed climate justice in the international processes around climate change, human rights, and sustainable development. And then somehow, having gone from all that thought or leadership advisory stuff, I set up a business, and now I'm CEO of a business. So, but it's always been in this sustainability field, and from a very young age, really being passionate that the way that we could look after nature wasn't by excluding humans, even though we're the cause of the problem, but it was that we had to find a way to make humans care as much about their natural environment as they did about the other humans in their life, and that it was really around trying to get the two to work in harmony was going to be the long-term answer, rather than simply nature without humans, nature with humans, one being pristine and the other being in very poor shape. So but I think that's really it. I kind of like looking back over the journey I've been on, because when I went to school, you were sold a career. You were sold straight pathways to having a career, and there was very clear entry points in education you had to have. And I think nowadays, luckily, that's nonsense, and there are many ways in which you can weave a career. And again, if people are passionate about sustainability or climate change, you have as much of a role to play on that, whether you're a philosopher or an artist, a HR professional or a climate scientist. You don't just have to be a climate scientist. There's a way for everybody to be active and influential on these issues, regardless of what your talent and skill is.
When the stakes, so when we're really passionate about what we're doing and the stakes are really high, what does it take to do that work and kind of be sustainable for yourself and kind of continue to have the passion and the energy to keep driving?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in that I have loads of energy, but it has a limit, like everyone's. And this is hard work. Like when you are confronted by some of the stats and the data and how slow our progress is, it can really be full of grief. Like it's a work that in some ways is full of grief, because in all the years I've worked on it, the problem has got worse. So I'm a failure. Like that's a disaster. We're failing. Every one of us that works on this issue is failing. But at the same time, I do see the opportunity. I really see the potential for human beings to create something better than we've created to date. And what's, I think, a really important point that you touched on there, Danny, is at the essence of everything is we have to have sustainable people. So if you have an organization with great sustainability goals, but everybody in it is burnt out, it's not going to work. So you have to have sustainable people to have a sustainable organization. And that's really important for, I think, the types of people that might be listening to this podcast to know, like, a focus on sustainable people is at the heart of being able to make a sustainable organization. Because if people aren't well, if they aren't well looked after, if they aren't encouraged to think creatively, if they don't have the psychological safety to challenge, then the organization won't reach its full potential and therefore will be a sustainable organization. So looking after yourself, finding that balance is important. I'm not going to pretend to you that I have found it or gotten near to it, but it's where you have to find a few things, the things in life that give you joy. And like that's where for me the sea swimming comes in, not for endurance or to test myself, but because it makes me feel good and it's good for my mental health and it's the best stress reliever I've come up with. And that's where nature's our friend. I mean, I know no better stress reliever than nature. So if you want a reason to care about nature, it's self-interest. You know, it helps us all regulate, helps us all feel happier.
I was going to say, swimming in the Atlantic Ocean in winter off the coast of Cork, it's going to take your mind off things, isn't it?
It does, yeah, completely.
And one of the things in your career that we didn't, because your introduction, we edited it right down. One of the things that you do is you're co-facilitator of the Structured Expert Dialogue for the United Nations Framework. So that's the ability to hold dialogue with people with opposing views and actually be able to get people that potentially feel very passionate or defensive or that, and then to engage in conversation. What are some of the lessons you've learned along the way around that? How can you hold spaces where people can talk about things that really matter?
I think it's not as easy, is it, as it sounds sometimes to get people talking. And I think particularly when the disciplines are very different. So each discipline, every sector has its own acronyms and lingo, and they're completely exclusionary of everybody else because nobody else understands that language. If you're not in that group, you don't understand. And climate change is one of the worst areas for this. So the climate change negotiations take place in this like legalese language with 1,001 acronyms, and it's all very technical and complicated. And all that does is exclude people from it. In, for example, this science policy dialogue under the Climate Change Convention that I was involved in for a few years, you were getting policymakers. So the people who are trying to decide, these are civil servants, right? Civil servants in a country trying to decide, well, what is it that this climate science is telling me? What do I need to change in the way we develop policies? Where do we need to invest money? What do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? They need to know that. And the scientists have all this research and data and projections of the future around which they have great certainty now and scenarios that they run. And so they can answer these really important questions that the policymakers about how should I plan for the future? What should I invest in? What should I not? But because they speak two completely different languages, they don't understand each other. So it is sometimes as simple as creating different spaces, safer spaces where maybe you don't have to stick up your hand in a big theater room of people to ask the guy on the panel up there the question, because how intimidating is that? But what if you create smaller spaces, smaller circles where people can ask their questions in a way where they're not going to feel so silly for asking their question, and where if they don't understand they can ask again for it to be explained, or where you set out the rules within that room where you say this is an acronym free zone and everybody is allowed, you have to speak as if you're speaking to an 11-year-old. Everybody speaks as though they're speaking to an 11-year-old. So there's no acronyms. And it's not, because acronyms do not make you clever. They just exclude other people from understanding what you're on about. So I think the way we design conversations is really important. When I worked in the Mary Robinson Foundation, we brought a lot of grassroots women into the formal UN negotiations on climate change. And that there we had to insist on this. If the negotiators and the ministers came into a room with these grassroots women leaders and they spoke in their UN mumbo jumbo, the women would have been totally excluded from the conversation. So they had to speak in English, but then they also had to respect the fact that these women communicated through stories. So they didn't communicate through 4 bullets on a PowerPoint slide. They don't talk like that. They tell you a story, so you need to respect the process, take the time and listen to the story. That's what, and that's the rule of entering into the space. If you don't have time to listen to someone else's story that's completely different to you, then don't come in the room. But if you come in the room, then these are the terms and conditions under which you enter. So I think we could do so much more on that, even within businesses, thinking how finance speaks a different language to HR, speaks a different language to the people who work down in operations or run a plant. So again, creating the spaces and the rules and bringing people together in smaller, safe places, I think really works.
You're an honorary organization development practitioner. Did you
Am
know
I?
that? You are
Absolutely.
Yay!
officially anointed. Absolutely. And I guess one of the things that you're really focusing on at the moment with your organization is to make it super practical for people. And so you invested in a tech platform and developing really practical courses for people to. Can you just tell a little bit more about that? That's okay.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah, so we've created an online platform to help people interact with us and build skills, but also get inspired and motivated to take action in their own life and most particularly at work. And so uh, the platform's about 1 year old now, so it does lots of things. So at the moment, you can go in there and you can learn about how to be a sustainability leader, or you can get all of your organization learning the fundamentals of sustainability through a sustainability 101, and you can get them gamified, competing with each other to see who can take most actions that benefit people on the planet, all this kind of stuff. Or you can come in and learn about HR. So you can come in and say, okay, I'm a HR professional. What do I need to know to be a sustainable human resource management professional? And so there's a course for you, 2 hours, knock yourself out. You're going to know all the key things you need to know about how to integrate sustainability into the employee life cycle and figure out how it fits into strategic HR. We have one for procurement. We have other great things that you can learn, like for green teams. So lots of green teams are very unsuccessful because they're groups of volunteers with no clear mandate or charter or purpose, no tools, nothing to help them. So a 1 hour how to run a successful green team gets you everything you need to know to make your green team more successful. So we're really trying to make it accessible and action oriented and uber practical. Like so practical. You will learn how to do things, not just theory with us. And then in this year, what we're building is we're building the community around our platform. So that if you're the lonely sole person in your organization who understands that HR needs to be doing more about sustainability, come through our platform and meet other like-minded people, share your story, hear their story, because it can be lonely doing this. This is hard work to do. It's really hard work. So you need support, and we hope then that by building the community and allowing people to tell their short stories and share their stories, I'm a big believer in the power of stories. So although I come from a science background, there are very few people who are moved by a graph, but people are moved by stories. So if we can help people create a space where people can hear stories, we create stories, and then they tell their own stories, I hope we can kind of get things moving a little bit faster. Anybody can check us out. Hopefully it's in the show notes.
It absolutely will be, and it's really worth exploring, isn't it, on the site? So what's the link for people to go to?
www.changebydegrees.com. Easy.
You do so much. Bits of the work that you do really bring you joy. What do you enjoy most?
I love it when you see I love if it's something that I'm doing live like this, even with a room online. I love seeing the little moments of light bulb moments when people get it, when they go, oh, there's something in the sustainability thing for me. I belong in it. So I love that. And I love it. I love now when we're using something that's online for people. So it allows us to reach way more people than we can, talking to everybody one by one or going into rooms with them. But where you get the feedback that people have, not just not just used our platform to build their skills, but built their own skills and used it as a way of bringing their team together, their organization together, to use the learning to change things in their organization. And when they come back and they say, we never thought about it this way before, but now that we've learned this and sat down as a team and thought about it, we found X, Y, and Z opportunity and X and Y risk that we're now managing better. So it's all around the impact. When people take what they learn and start to feel empowered and like, oh, it can make a difference. I think that's my favorite part.
Right. And what do you find most challenging?
Being a CEO. I'm a scientist. I didn't do business studies for O levels or A levels. So you get a little bit of imposter syndrome being the CEO of a business when you never there was nothing you ever learned about. It's not what I ever imagined myself at. Scientists, it's this weird thing where if you study science, nobody ever really equips you for the fact that you could run your own business, that you could run a social enterprise, that you could be a B Corp company. All of it, you just never. Well, in my day anyway, you weren't brought up with that as being a possibility. So yeah, that's my area of learning right now is how to run a successful business, how to raise investment, how to grow into new markets. all really, really exciting. And I think for me, the excitement of that is because we're an impact driven business. I want more people in more organizations to be, making change so that their organization becomes sustainable. And so the exciting part about the business is the fact that it can help us to get our message and bring so many more people into the conversation. But yeah, I guess I'll still feel like an imposter of a CEO 5 years from now, even though I'll have learned a lot more.
Sort of leveraging the fact that you have one foot in both worlds. So on one foot, you are the person who's advocating for a cause towards the CEO, and on the other foot, you are the CEO. So, and like many CEOs, you've got a lot of priorities. There's so much to do, not enough time to do it, and you have a team around you. So when your team come to you with a proposal, what is the right way for them, or the optimal way for them to come to you and say, look, I've got this idea, I really want you to, I know you got a lot of things on, how can people present it in a way that it does get the CEO's attention and it can get acted on?
Yeah, so I'm always impressed. Like, some CEOs aren't. I'm really impressed by creativity. So, and someone who has taken the time to question the way you've always done something and say, well, maybe there's a better way to do it, or a faster way, or a cheaper way, or a more impactful way. Or what about instead of thinking it like this, we thought about it like this? So I think creativity is a great way to get my attention. Um, uh, yeah, if I can save us money or bring us new business. So like I'm also interested in ideas that can help us break into new markets. So Change by Degrees is expanding into the UK in 2025. So anybody who came to me with an idea that was concrete about how to make our content more relevant to a UK market, I'd be all ears. So I guess it depends on the point in time. But again, that's a creativity thing. It's making sure that your employees have enough confidence to know that they should be, and you want them to be having new ideas. You want them to be questioning. And I think to do that, and this is something I talk a lot to boards about as well, is to do that, you have to give permission to get things wrong. So you have to give this permission to fail. So there is no 100% sustainable business out there in the world. It doesn't exist. We don't know how to be fully sustainable as businesses. But the only way we're going to get there is by innovation, trying and failing. So if you're a company and you're not failing in some point, it means you're not trying hard enough. So and creating an atmosphere in the organization where you say it's okay if you make a mistake, but let's learn quickly from it. Let's not waste a lot of money and time on it, and let's move on to the next thing. But yeah, are going to have to take risks if we're going to change. So I want to create an atmosphere in our business whereby we can experiment, take risks, learn fast, because I think that's how we'll innovate and that's how we'll have more impact.
Question for you. So you're a social enterprise, which
Mm.
means you've got a particular outlook and a particular. How challenging has it been to get investment and find the right kind of investors to support your organisation as a social enterprise?
So the social enterprise title is a tricky one. Some in some geographies it's well understood and it's very attractive to people. In other geographies it's poorly understood and people think you're a charity and you'll work for them for free. So that's a problem. So I think possibly we lean more into being a B Corp company now. So again, what it is really, a social enterprise, you're about creating benefits for society, and that's what B Corp is all about too, and has the added value that we've been externally verified as being this type of company. I think we should be, so we've proven to be attractive to investors because we have this strong purpose and because we have paid attention to the way we show up in the world across these different pillars, from how we treat our employees, the impact we have on our clients, how we look after the environment, how we look after the communities that we operate in, how we're governed, and the legal form of the business we have. Yeah. So like all of that is attractive. It's almost like by being a B Corp or a sustainable enterprise that you've done a lot of the due diligence already for an investor before they come in. And so you should be less risk and more attractive. And then if they're looking to the world and how it's evolving, it's clear that these are the types of businesses that will be around 5, 10, 15 years from now. And again, lots of research coming through from B Corp Europe research around the fact that B Corp companies are more financially viable. They're attracting and retaining more staff. They're attracting higher levels of investment than their non-B Corp counterparts. There's a lot of evidence to show that it makes strong business sense, and it's a strategic move for your business.
And I guess you're really clear and upfront about what you stand for, and you attract investors who get that as well.
It attracts investors. It attracts employees. So that's amazing. So there's a real there's a real lack of talent out there at the moment, but people want to work for companies like ours. They want to work for a company with a clear sense of purpose and where they know why they're showing up for work every day and what the benefit of that is going to be. And increasingly then it's going to attract customers and clients because they want to be associated with, they want their brand to be aligned with other brands in their supply chain who hold the same values as they do. So yeah, we tie our reputation to our clients when we put our two brands together, but likewise they do that with us, and that's an important relationship.
All of the different things you've done and we've actually learned today before the call started that you've actually done expeditions to Borneo and to West Africa and places like that as well. You've done so many things. What have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned along the way?
Oh, one of the biggest lessons goes right back to when I was living in Mauritania for 3 years. So Mauritania is a vast country, 2.5 times the size of France in West Africa, between Morocco and Senegal. But you've probably never seen it on a map. 80% of it is Sahara Desert, and I lived there for 3 years, and it was an amazing learning experience and also a very humbling experience because people defined wealth and well-being in a completely different way than we do in Western culture there. I was also very welcomed by a very different culture who put up with me being a rule-breaking young Irish woman who was like running around sticking her head under every rock and interested in everything. But one of the things I learned there was humility, because I was working in these wetlands and what turned out to be collecting the data for what turned out to be my PhD, and local people herding goats, local women collecting wild plants for medicines told me that there were crocodiles living in these wetlands, and I was like, "Oh, bless, you're wrong. All the books say there are no crocodiles here. The crocodiles were hunted out of here years ago. There is no documentation of crocodiles in this country. They're gone." And I was like, "It must have been a monitor lizard." And they were like, "Tara, we know the difference between a monitor lizard and a crocodile." Then they're like, "This is the local name and it has a long mouth and lots of teeth and whatever." And so I finally listened, and I camped out on a rock for 3 nights in this place where Dabalahi, who worked with me, told me to go. And sure enough, on the third night, a crocodile came out from a cave onto a dry riverbed that hadn't had water in it for over a year and sat there like some prehistoric creature. And of course they were right. Why would they not be right? So, like, why would they not be right? So science is not always right, you know? And the humility to listen to people who are not the experts, but who have lived knowledge, who have real experience, is really important. And you might find that in work, in that some of the best ideas for sustainability action might come from an operator who works down the back of the plant but knows that machinery inside out. And I heard of a story recently the other day where one change to one valve changed a company, saved a company €200,000 a year in energy. One valve. The person who will know that will not be an engineer sitting in an office. It will be the person with the lived experience of working every day with the machinery. And so if we don't have the humility to listen to the people who know all of this, we will miss opportunities and we will get things wrong. So and I just think there's so many ways, like humility. That was an exercise in humility. It was an exercise in listening, really listening to people, giving them my time, taking the time to actually go and figure it out. But I would have missed an amazing thing, which was then a whole journey of discovery I went on with these crocodiles if I hadn't listened, if I'd just written it off.
If there's somebody who's sat here thinking this sounds like a fascinating career, I want to Tara's footsteps, where do people start? What advice would you give people?
So I always say that people should follow their passion. So if you want to work and play a part in making the world a better place because you care about the environment, or you care about people, or you care about animals, I think that the starting place is that you don't have to be an environmental scientist to do that. You don't have to be a climate scientist. There are so many pathways to it. You might do that because you love art and you might connect people to those issues through your art, or you might be a musician, you might be a philosopher, you might be a chemical engineer. I mean, you might be a HR professional. But if you do care about this stuff, you can bring it in with the talents that you have. But I think the worst thing you can do is pick something to study because you think it might be the thing you have to do to get a certain career. None of the jobs I've done in my entire life were invented when I was in school. None of them. Even when I was in college, they hadn't really been invented. So this notion that you're kind of picking your career and going for it, I think is a total load of nonsense. But if you pursue jobs and study that is around issues that you love and you're passionate about, well, I just don't think you can go wrong. And that will bring you work.
Brilliant. Well, I want to say a huge thank you, Tara. It's been a really inspiring conversation. If people want to follow your work, if they want to keep up to date with your insights, and also, to learn more about the course, what's the best way for people to stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so probably LinkedIn. So follow Change by Degrees and myself, Tara Shine, on LinkedIn. I'd say that's the best way.
There's so many different takeaways. Danny, what are you taking away from today's conversation?
Where to start? I think the thing that's really sticking me is we need sustainable people to have sustainable organisations. So loud and clear, really on board with that. The fact that doing something is better than doing nothing. Just start somewhere. And I really enjoyed the practical tips you gave for people just to kind of get going and kind of make a difference in the way that they can.
Yeah, I think some of the things that stood out for me is don't be the lone nut. There's a very seductive invitation for HR to be the sole ambassador for this, but you have to recruit other people onto the mission, don't you? And you need that support, and you need to have the courage to ask the senior people, and you need to be explicit about what you need from them as well. I think there's some really good practical tips, and everything that you shared with us in the service of sustainability can actually be just transferred to other change projects as well. But what we really want people to do is take away from this is, get involved in the sustainability programs in your organization, make it your business, insert yourself into it. And people have inherent skills to make this work that others don't. So really sort of offer that invitation. Any final thoughts you want people leave people with today, Tara?
Yeah, I would say, look, if this conversation has made you more curious about sustainability and what you can do, then do come onto our website and Change by Degrees, because we have a fabulous new course that we created with Kite Insights on sustainable human resource management. That's the one I mentioned earlier. It's just 2 hours long, really interactive, super practical. But build those skills, and then you will be able and more confident to integrate sustainability into every step of the employee life cycle, but also turn up at that strategic decision making table and be able to be the voice for the social side of sustainability and really advocating for it as a change process. So I can send you all the links so people can find that easily.
Please do. And everything that Tara's talked about today will be in the show notes. So please go forward and check that out as well. Thank you so much, Tara. It's been a brilliant conversation. We've really enjoyed it. It's been great. Thank you so much for your time. We know how busy you are.
So a happy 2025.
Yes.